Hey everyone, and welcome back or welcome to my channel. Today's topic will delve into the navigation of K-pop controversies and everything that's misunderstood with apologies and taking accountability from the idol and fan perspective. This video was inspired by the recent Kiss of Life controversy, which is also where I've seen the loudest and most strongest attempt at a cancellation of a group, so they'll be used slightly throughout the video as the example that I refer to. However, this doesn't mean that this can't apply to previous controversies or future controversies, because I feel like these points don't change much over time. But yeah, before I start, I'd appreciate it if you can like and subscribe to my channel. Without further ado, let's start off with the first point. Before we dive into the fan discourse, it's important to start by acknowledging what Kiss of Life did was wrong. There's pretty much no excuses in the current year of 2025 to think any of that was right. The backlash isn't solely about refusing to forgive an idol for their action. It's about the performative nature of apologies that don't feel as though accountability will be taken. In an era where cultural appropriation and racial insensitivity have been discussed repeatedly, ignorance is no longer a justifiable excuse. Idols and entertainment companies have seen this play out time and time again as they witness other idols getting called out and dragged for similar behavior. As a result, the repeated nature of these controversies feel like a lack of care overall to these issues. In Kiss of Life's case, there was a message on Bubble from Belle where she asked fans not to leave the fandom before the live stream, therefore strongly implying prior awareness of the reception. If there was concern about backlash before the content even aired, it raises the question, why proceed at all? Yes, idols are human and therefore are prone to making mistakes. However, this doesn't excuse harmful actions or shield them from consequences. Audiences would be open to forgiveness if idols simply acknowledged the harm caused regardless of intent and offered a sincere, direct apology. The issue with this is that many idols struggle to admit when they're wrong, become defensive, or focus on their intention rather than the impact of their actions. You can hurt people without intending to, and apologizing isn't admitting malice. It's about showing empathy, acknowledging the harm, and learning from it. I do realize that this would not be a blanket approach for all issues, considering the many instances in which idols apologize for the most randomest things. However, there are some clear, universally agreed upon issues in which there is a clear yeah, nah, why would you do that? And that's what I mainly refer to. Not that this is a justified reason, but the implication of an apology may also explain why idol apologies are always not the best. When an idol issues an apology, especially one that directly acknowledges wrongdoing, it can be seen as an admission of guilt, which carries significant long-term effects for both their personal brand and the group financially. Entertainment companies thus often walk a fine line in how direct they want their idols to be with their apologies, and as a result, idol apologies fall flat in various ways.
When I touch you, kiss you, you're gone, realize.
This next section explores how we as fans further stray the controversies into what we currently see with the discourse that gets had. The discourse often shifts away from those impacted and centers instead on protecting the idols. Rather than viewing the apologies as a means for the idol to take accountability, certain K-pop stans often weaponize it so that everyone is required to accept the apology and framing any refusals as an unfair attack on the idol. As a result, this shifts the narrative to make the idols the victim when instead they may be facing valid criticism. Selectivism seems to also be another prevalent issue in which fans will react differently to the same controversy based on who committed the act. It's to the point that some fans should honestly receive gold medals for the mental gymnastics that they hoop over to defend their faves. If the backlash being received by Kiss of Life is justifiable in your eyes, then that same energy should be matched with all other idols who committed the same controversy. This isn't to argue that Kiss of Life's backlash is undeserved, but rather to point out the double standards that exist depending on the idol. The selective outrage also exposes the performative nature of certain K-pop fans in which there really isn't genuine concern about racism or cultural insensitivity, and instead is just an excuse to hate under the guise of this moral high ground that they believe that they have. This performativity shows up in how some will just cling on to the controversy for a very long time, not for the sake of accountability, but to keep keep fueling fan wars. If idols cross a line that you can't accept, then it's perfectly valid to disengage or even voice your opinion. However, where certain K-pop fans get it wrong is when they decide to cross the line into hate territory. This cycle continues as many fans can't distinguish between calling out harmful behavior and weaponizing the controversy as justified hate. When outrage is fueled more by stan wars than for a desire to hold idols accountable, we lose the opportunity to create change and thus the point of the conversation.
Get loud, got to come bring some down. Baby, come and give it to me. Right top, we don't need to get you in my vibe.
And finally, one of the most defining moments in controversies being the apology. I feel like people forget what an apology truly is and the intent of it. An apology doesn't erase the harm caused. It should serve as the starting point for accountability, not a get out of jail free card. It should be an idol accepting the realities of the consequences of their actions, being the varying degrees of responses, trust being lost, or loss of fans. Once again, some fans have assumed the default response to an apology is forgiveness, if it seems subjectively genuine. However, accepting an apology is a personal process and people may respond to it in different ways. Some may find healing in forgiveness, while others may consider this a complete deal breaker, and we should understand that both responses are valid. It's not our place to police how others should feel about the controversy as well as the apology. Just as much as people shouldn't control how we feel about it, we also shouldn't dictate how people should react to it. Impacted groups are expected to accept the apologies, but then are also shamed if they move on from the situation for having no backbone, or then if they vocalize discomfort, are invalidated to the point where they can't even emote without being somehow wrong. What makes things subjective and complex is the fact that K-pop fans interpret situations and apologies through their own lens, emotions, and standards. But at the end of the day, even the most subjectively genuine sounding apology is just empty promises of self-improvement. Unless they actively change their behavior and make sure they never repeat similar behaviors, it truly means nothing. There should also be an important distinction between accepting an apology, holding someone accountable, and continuing to engage with the idol's work, in which none of these things automatically means a person has abandoned their principles. Accountability isn't about permanent cancellation or complete disengagement. It's about ensuring the harmful actions are recognized, addressed, and not repeated. When someone accepts an apology or moves on, it doesn't necessarily mean they think the behavior was excusable. It might just mean they're choosing to accept the idol's acknowledgement to improve, or they might just prioritize their own peace. However, when there is a lack of distinguishing between the three acts, this ultimately leads to the present day environment of K-pop fandom culture, in which K-pop no longer becomes synonymous with fun. But yeah, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching, and let me know your thoughts on the Kiss of Life controversy, whether the response has been justified, what you think is next for them, or anything about K-pop controversies and idol apologies. For me, what Kiss of Life did was inexcusable, and I'm in no position to be accepting that apology. However, the fact that I can see impacted groups accept it makes me okay with the decision to continue supporting them. To me, it wouldn't be until this becomes a recurring issue in which that is when I'll fully drop them. But also, this is my own personal approach and is not how you may choose to react or act in regards to this controversy. But yeah, my next video will either be on XG, maybe something to do with Somi, since I don't know what's really happening with her, and with the debut of All Day Project, it's interesting. Or just forming my hype version of Got the Beat. And so if you're interested to hear or discuss any of these topics, then please like and subscribe to keep up to date, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!